Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Extra Mile. My name is Gene Gerkoff. It's a beautiful day in Montclair, New Jersey, and today's episode is truly something special. Yesterday, I had the chance to go for a walk along the Hudson River in New York City with Brendan Cusick and Patrick Morrissey, two members of a four-person team called Human Powered Potential. This team did something extraordinary. They rowed a boat, yes, rowed from Monterey, California, all the way to Kauai, Hawaii. That's 2,800 miles across the Pacific Ocean as part of an event called the World's Toughest Row. What makes this even more incredible is that Patrick has Parkinson's disease. And this wasn't just an athletic challenge, it was a mission to raise money and awareness for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, a cause which all of you know is very near and dear to my heart. They started with a goal of raising $1.2 million, and by the end, they raised over $43 million. In this episode, we'll talk about how the team came together, how they trained for 18 months, how Pat made the courageous decision to go from a potential spokesperson for this event to a full crew member. We'll also dive into what it's like to spend 41 days at sea battling storms, seasickness, rogue waves, and sleep deprivation, rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, around the clock for almost a month and a half. But most of all, we talk about purpose, the deep emotional bond that these men formed with each other, the community they built, and how the support they received from thousands of people all over the world helped keep them going. This is a story about resilience, teamwork, brotherhood, and the power of believing in something bigger than yourself. I hope that it inspires you as much as it inspires me. So let's dive in. Wherever you are, turn up your volume, turn on your charity miles, and come along for a walk or run with me and Brendan and Pat of Team Human Powered Potential. Every mile matters.
You don't really know who you are or what you are until you put a really big challenge in front of you.
Fear is an asset and ally here to help you be magnificent.
This crazy, silly, stupid idea to run across the Sahara Desert.
You did make it this time, but you said if you didn't make it, you would try again and again.
Everybody's connected to nature, connected to music, to their families, and now we're going to build a world that doesn't have racism and war and starving kids.
I kept telling myself, run at me, and just keep smiling.
Brendan, Pat, thank you very much for joining me on this misty morning in New York City. Really appreciate it.
Gene, thanks for having us. I'd say beautiful morning, but It's a little misty, but it's nice and cool, and we're out here with the skyline, and just a beautiful place.
Well, something tells me that you guys don't mind a little bit of weather. So I'll start just by asking you to each introduce yourselves, and then we'll take it from there.
So my name is Pat Morrissey. I'm 54. I always say that, but it's because I just turned 54 a couple days ago.
Oh.
Have you up there? Yeah. And I'm a part of Human Powered Potential. I've had Parkinson's for 5 years. I was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's. And Human Powered Potential is a team of four that rowed the Pacific Ocean this last summer. And we raised money for the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
Amazing. And when you say rowed, it's R-O-W-E-D, not R-O-D-E. So it's like, some people are like, they rode a bike on the Pacific. You rode a boat.
We rowed a boat. And maybe Brendan can add a little bit to that. It's a four-person ocean rowing boat.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Gene, for having us. Really appreciate it. It is a beautiful morning. I'm Brendan Cusick out of Durango, Colorado. I'm the skipper of Team Human Powered Potential, which is a four-person ocean rowing team that participated in the World's Toughest Row in 2024, where we rowed from Monterey, California to Hanalei Bay in Kauai over the course of 41 days. And we're two of the four-person team that participated in that race. And just we focused in on raising money for Parkinson's and for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And just really an honor to be here with you.
Oh, it's an honor for me, and thank you both. We are walking along the Hudson River in New York City, down by Battery Park. We see the Statue of Liberty right in front of us. It's a gray, kind of misty morning, maybe a little rain in the future, but like I said, I don't think these two mind the weather very much. So how did this come together?
This is a good start for Brendan.
Okay.
Brendan is the culprit of putting this whole thing together, and it was really put together for his 50th birthday, but he'd be a good one to tell the beginning of this.
Excellent. Okay, so the way I was going to ask that question is, whose knucklehead idea was this? So that's you.
That would be me. So I'd been following ocean rowing for a while. I found it to be a pretty phenomenal endurance event. I come from a background of climbing big mountains around the world. And our teammate and close friend, Scott Foreman, we've known each other for 30 years. We used to guide together. And for his 50th birthday, we ran the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim, which is...
I'm going to do that this year.
Fantastic. Yeah, totally recommend it. And during the course of that, I started thinking, well, this is what we're doing for Scott's 50th. What are we going to do for mine? And he said, whatever it is, I'm all in. Fast forward a couple of years, and I found out about the World's Toughest Row, and most importantly, the availability of a boat, which in the United States can be a bit of a challenge because ocean rowing isn't as big so in quick succession, we became the owners of a very storied boat, the American Spirit. She has 4 world records to her name, and we started to formulate a plan of what this might look like, and we brought on our friend Pete Durso. Pete and Scott had known each other for a number of years, went through residency and medical school. And we also at the same time recognized that each rowing team partners with a charity to raise funds throughout the course of the crossing. And we partnered with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. We all had close friends living with the disease and knew that this was really important for us. And when this happened, I reached out to Pat. Pat and I worked together at the same company, and we also happened to be neighbors, live about 2 houses away from each other.
Oh.
And I approached Pat about maybe just being a spokesperson and kind of supporting the journey. And we recognized that we also needed a 4th team member, but I wasn't sure if he was going to want to row. He had a lot of responsibilities with his job at the time. And it was a couple of months later that Pat reached out and said, I think I want to do this. And, the rest is kind of history, but that's really how it came together. And I'm sure Pat can speak more to his engagement and decision to move forward with actually being a part of the rowing team. But I think what it really did is it, just enhanced and made our row just that much more powerful for Pat's, engagement and just the overall Parkinson's community as a whole in terms of what we can do when living with the disease.
Amazing. So what was this like for you? What was the process for you to say that you wanted to do this?
Yeah, so it was a process because I was early in my diagnosis, and I hadn't told many people about this. It just kind of friends and family, and it was even early and through the late COVID days. So we were working at home, and a lot of people even at work did not know much about it. So Brendan and I would go to coffee every Friday or a couple times a month. And he was telling me about this endeavor, and I thought it was kind of crazy. And then he came to ask me one time in the hallway at work, and we were talking. He goes, "You want to be, part of this, maybe as a spokesperson," as he'd mentioned. And I was, I think that would be great. And he told me it was for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And that was one of the reasons I thought it would be really good to be involved. The Fox Foundation, to be involved with them and be in the forefront of research and be able to get connected with the organization. I knew how important that was for me. And so that was one reason, along with the, just be involved with these guys. So a couple months went along, and I was just in the background watching them put this thing together. And all of a sudden, it started coming to my mind, maybe I could do this, I was back in my day as Division I wrestler, and in my old adult days, did a lot of bike riding and a little bit of endurance, nothing like these guys have done. But so I talked to my wife and I said, I may call Brendan up tonight and just talk to him a little bit about maybe being involved. And I remember that look that she gave me, like, oh, I know where this is going. And sure enough, we got on the phone and I got done with it. And I said, Dina, I think I'm doing this. And she was like, I basically knew that's where this was going. And from that point, it was history. We started the process of getting me back into, well, we bought the first concept too. Yeah, my first time on a rower.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but you, before Pat was signed on officially, you were already going to be doing this for the Fox Foundation. What was the other connection to Parkinson's that you mentioned?
Yeah, so there was kind of a network there. Two of my best friends growing up, both of their fathers had passed with the disease. So I was very, connected to people living or had passed with it. My stepbrother has Parkinson's, as well as my godmother. And then a close friend of Scott and Pete and I, Matt Ackerman, also lives with the disease. And we had brought him early on into the fold of what our initiative was, to really help with the fundraising and be a bit of a liaison for the team as well. And so we all had a connection to Parkinson's and to the foundation. And we just knew that rowing for this cause was going to be of deep value, more so than just, a few endurance athletes out to see,
Right.
what they could do. So that was the additional connection to the foundation, and Matt is on the patient council, so he was able to help facilitate some networking within the organization to understand what the involvement would be, what it would look like moving forward in support of what we were trying to do.
Amazing. So from the time that you signed on, Pat, to when you actually went out on this row, how long was that? 2 years, you said, or?
It was about a year and a half. They were closer to 2 years going from the
Right.
beginning, and it took me a couple months to get going. And the first couple months, we kind of made an agreement that let's take this a couple months and make sure I can do this before we go really promoting that I'm on it. And
Smart.
yeah, sure, because we kind of knew that it would maybe take it to the next level with me being involved with having Parkinson's. But we started training, a couple months into it, and things started coming back, and I was able to keep up.
What is training? What is training even? How do you even begin to start training like this? 'Cause you guys are in Utah, right? Or Colorado?
Yeah.
So there's not an ocean in Colorado. What were you guys doing to start training for this?
So we, Brendan and the team had hired, Brendan, maybe you can talk about the beginning of hiring the coaching group.
Yeah, so we hired a fellow by the name of Gus Barton. He's a world record ocean rower out of the UK. Ocean rowing is really big over in the UK. And he had a coaching program for ocean rowers called Ocean Ready. So we engaged his expertise, and the training would involve about 4 to 5 days a week on the erg at home. doing very specific work to just engage the muscles for the long endeavor. And then that was interspersed with weight training and other long endurance training to get ready. And then once a month, the four of us would fly out to Ventura, where we had the boat staged, and we would go out for long multi-day rows around the Channel Islands in that area, and then fly home and just continue that build of training week in and week out to accumulate the volume that was needed for the endeavor.
Wow. So like once a month, you guys would go to California. Ventura's in California, right?
I'm sorry, Ventura. Yes, yes.
So you go to California to get, but even if you're doing that for like 18 months, that's only like 18 times on the water in this boat before you're going to row across. There's not very like specific training. To me, anyways, doesn't sound like that would be a little bit scary to me.
Yeah, and but it is of value. Interestingly, so the World's Toughest Row, requires a minimum of 120 hours on the boat. And if you really break that down, it's not very long compared to the 41 days that we spent on the ocean.
Right.
But what it is it's really developing your strategy. So we would row on our crossing and during our training rows, 2 hours on, 2 hours off the oars, 24 hours a day for the duration. And so when you're out there, it's really getting used to the boat, getting the feel of it, practicing with the different, safety measures on the boat, understanding that rotational shift. So it was really efficient. So no one was off the oars for very long, and you're basically just refining your technique. But spending time on the boat was important. There were certain aspects that we didn't expose ourselves to, such as, big ocean conditions, but that's tough to train for.
Yeah.
The time on the boat was really to just literally for that, to just spend the time getting that familiarity. How does your body respond to bigger ocean swells in terms of seasickness and the likes? But the time at home was the specificity of getting the physical training in.
Right.
You'd get some hand soreness or, your rear end and stuff during the course of the training, but the actual time on the boat wasn't as important for the physical training as other aspects were that you spent out there. So as an example, it was time together, because Pat and I are lucky enough that we live together.
Sure.
Or live in the same town. But it was time together. It was getting to know each other, because this row, more than being an intense physical and endurance challenge, you have the whole mental component as well. It's four guys on a small 28-foot vessel in some very challenging conditions for a long time. So more than just getting used to that rotation and strategy of rowing was the time together, learning each other. I mean, Scott and I were lucky enough to know each other for a long time. Pat's just coming in. Pete, we just had met. So you want to make sure that you are functioning well as a whole to support each other when we know that we're going to be pushing ourselves to such a limit. How can we ensure that we're doing so in a very supportive way? So all of that together, creates the different components that make a crossing like this successful.
I can't even imagine. So 18 months of this training, you're also fundraising for the foundation. And I don't know, let's pop up this way. Give you a little bit of a crossing here, and then we'll go right. Let's pass in under this fence here where it says no trespassing. We'll trespass. Oh, maybe not, because it's blocked. Oh, we'll go back around this way. How did the fundraising go through these 18 months? What was that like?
So the fundraising, our first initial goal of fundraising was $1.2 million.
Okay.
And
How did you arrive at that goal?
I think
Oh, you made a
we we were able to basically come up with how much we thought that we could return on how much it cost us to start the row.
Got it.
So it was a nominal number relative to that.
Got
That how much it we predicted it would make us to fund the whole race. And so we started off pretty slow, and we were working with the foundation. And what we ended up realizing is the Michael J. Fox Foundation, as a partner in this, that's what they knew how to raise money.
Right.
And so we did a golf tournament. We had an initial, an initial, sorry, somebody's passing us, dinner that raised some a good amount of money. But we ended up really being able to just start focusing on our rowing and letting the foundation do what they do. And they started reaching out to their network and helping us program this over a long run. So they were very integral in the fundraising portion of our and success of our row.
Was this your first time really doing any major fundraising?
Yes, that's something we were all
It was across the street here.
yeah,
Go now.
endurance athletes, not fundraisers.
Yeah.
So we end up figuring out, let's let the people that know how to do that, and we'll just row.
And then, so not to bury the lead because I want to get back to the row, but how much did you end up raising when all was said and done?
We raised, our goal ended up being 41 million, and we are over 41 million, 43 plus million dollars at the end of this.
And what do you think, other than having the foundation being able to support that and really put their muscle behind it, what do you think was it about this story that helped catalyze such an incredible fundraising effort?
One of the things we've done a lot of pondering on that, and I think it was the ability to bring the story couplefold. First, the Parkinson side of the story, but also the teamwork and the camaraderie that we were able to build through this whole endeavor. And we became a team. Brendan had talked about that it was almost a social experiment as much as a physical experiment. And being able to show that emotion through the whole process of growing and making it at the end, going through the ups and downs of the process. And that's what I really feel that brought that next level to people wanting to follow the story is the teamwork and the brotherhood that came out of it, along with raising money for Parkinson's.
You have anything you want to add to that, Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest components is just the emotion. When you engage, and the Fox Foundation, along with our kind of social media, really reached a profound number of people, and it really helped tell the story. And folks were able to kind of ride along with us, as it were, as we shared, the trials and tribulations of going through it. And so that emotional connection, with the story of just not only what we were achieving, but that we were doing so for a greater cause. And I think that connection just really enhanced the power of what is possible. And, that contribution, or kind of integration of the emotional component brought a lot of people in and just engaged a huge outpouring of support. So it just expanded that awareness and how would I put it? But just, you know, the emotional context of what we were going through and folks relating in their own ways, I think just enhanced that community and the outpouring of ultimately the financial, you know, success that the campaign had.
Well, that's actually even a maybe not to say that the 43 million isn't amazing, but the community and the social element that you built around this movement was really incredible. Did you find that most of that was happening during the training or when you were out on the ocean during the race?
Yeah, so most of it was a build, I would say, and you know, we raised most of the funds during the crossing.
Wow.
And then we almost doubled it up after we finished.
Wow.
So, you know, it didn't stop when we landed on the beach in Hawaii. You know, the outpouring of support just continued to grow, and we knew that a little bit. We had a ocean rowing coach in addition to Gus, who did our physical training. We also had our a weather router and kind of on the boat guidance from a ocean rowing expert, Angus Collins, foremost ocean rower. And he had let us know, because when we went into this, even the idea of raising 1.2 million seemed daunting at the time.
More daunting than actually crossing the ocean?
No, just it felt like it had an extra layer of urgency. You know, we could see, okay, you could see the map for what we needed to do to prepare physically and mentally for the crossing. But then you layer in the fundraising aspect, and it just added this additional complexity that none of us were aware of. And he would remind us, as, you know, someone who had rowed multiple oceans for causes, that most of the fundraising is going to happen during the crossing and after. And so it was a little bit of reassurance. In addition, you know, having the incredible network of the foundation behind us to really do what they do well, which is fundraise.
Right.
And so it was, you know, certainly you know, just a build. So yeah, I mean, I think all of that combined, you know, allowed, you know, the success that we had effectively.
So while you are out on the ocean, you are not like fully disconnected. You're like through satellite or wherever you can communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had the sat phones and like InReach, Garmin. Right, we were able to communicate, and we did what is called a beacon, which we could transfer data. It was we had to set it up, and it wasn't a perfect system, but we were able to, every once in a while when we had time and energy, get some data sent off to everybody.
Okay, yeah, so that was going to be one of the things I was curious about. So like what it's like to be out there on the ocean, no land in sight, totally disconnected, but you weren't totally disconnected. Still, it's got to be unbelievable to just be out there.
Yeah.
But before we get to out there, let's start at the first day of the race. Where did you leave from?
We left from Monterey, California.
Okay. And so this was a race. So there was other boats.
Yep, there were 9 boats. We, you know, spent about a little over a week in Monterey preparing the boats, getting everything packed aboard. We had 55 days worth of food, fuel, we had a small jet boil stove, and then the food consisted of freeze-dried meals and 4,000 to 5,000 calorie snack packs per day. And so
it's a 4,000 to 5,000 calorie snack pack.
So it's a combination of during our training rows, we would each kind of test out the foods that seem palatable, efficient, and calorie dense for each of us to pack for the crossing. And so, you know, I mean, it was everything from gummy bears to high protein bars to jerky, dried fruit, you know, just a whole combination of things packed into a 1 gallon Ziploc, and you had 55 of those. And then on top of that, you know, your 3 freeze-dried meals per day per person. And so it was a really, you know, a lot of preparation leading up to getting the boat ready, making sure it's balanced, you know, good ballast, and everything readily accessible. Because once you're out there, you want to be as efficient as possible. Keep in mind that in a 24-hour period, you only have 12 hours that you're off the oars. It's interspersed by rowing. And so when you come off the oars, you're tired. And so you want to be able to grab the food, eat, and get as much sleep as you can in that 2-hour period, so that when you come back on the oars, you're feeling relatively refreshed and hydrated to continue going. And it was amazing. I mean, there were times, but for the most part, when you did get on the oars, you felt like you had rested. But by the end of that 2 hours, you were feeling pretty cooked. So anyways, not to get ahead of ourselves.
What's not going to come through in the podcast is the look of incredulity on my face. But so, all right. The sleep thing is crazy. You're going 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So you only have like 2 hours you're like sleeping in 2-hour increments. That I don't understand. But I'm also trying to imagine what this boat looks like. I've seen the pictures, so I know what it looks like. I've seen the videos. But you've got 4 people with 55 days worth of food for each of you. I know I'm going to go to the grocery store later and I'm going to buy food for my family for a week. Like that's a ton of food. How are you fitting all this in a boat? How big is this boat? This isn't like a rowboat that you have on like a lake at summer camp.
No, it's a very different, it's a custom built boat specifically for ocean rowing. So it's 28 feet long. At each end are 2 cabins or berths.
So 28 feet, that's like 3 car lengths.
It's about 3 car lengths. Yep. And so each berth is enclosed, and inside each one is a pad for sleeping. You got some storage containers or, you know, kind of net baskets on each side. And that's where all your gear is. And the aft cabin, the rear, is all the communications. So you've got your GPS, your radios, the steering mechanism, and then in the middle it's open, and that's where the rowing takes place. And then in each end, along the sides of the boat, are storage bins, or you know, where all the food gets packed in very methodically and layered to fit in, you know, these 4 large storage areas designed into the boat to hold all of that food. In addition, not only do you have the food, but you've got, you know, an emergency life raft packed in, you know, an anchor, which cracks me up because, you know, you're in 14,000 feet of water most of the journey. But so it's a tremendous amount of gear, and everything effectively in triplicate, because, you know, you don't want anything to break. And if it does, you want to have replacement. You got repair, tools, parts, the whole 9 yards. So the boat itself, she weighs about 1,200 pounds, really lightweight. You know, she's meant to move as efficiently as possible across the water. Not a deep keel. It's a real flat bottom boat. But, you know, then we added, you know, in addition to ourselves plus our gear and food, you know, another 1,000 to 1,500 pounds worth of equipment and supplies. So when we started, pretty heavy, but she moved amazingly well despite that.
So I have rowed a boat before, like at summer camp, like, you know, like a regular boat. And it doesn't go like very far with each row. So I'm imagining 2 people rowing at a time. this 3,000-pound boat that's the size of 3 cars. Like, how does it go anywhere? How are you generating enough force or power to like make this thing go anywhere? It's like,
So that's a good question, and it's really interesting. We're walking down the street in New York, and we would go at probably best 3 knots, and we're walking 3 knots right now.
we're walking 3 knots.
Yeah, so
So
basically
this is as fast as
you're going at the fast,
and we're like, oh, this is a
leisurely stroll across an intersection. Yeah.
And
So
waves, right? Like
yes, so the first
wind.
wind and currents, and yes, waves. The first week outside of Monterey, we got into a storm, and 30-foot waves, 30 to 40-foot waves, 30-mile knot winds, and it was something that we had never prepared for in around Ventura. So it started off pretty heavy.
And so what were you thinking when that happened? Were you like, I don't think this is for me?
Well,
Or like, oh, we just got like, I don't know, what were you thinking?
yeah. So we got into it, and I mean, and one of the good aspects is it was at the beginning, so we had a lot of energy to move through there. But Peter and myself got real seasick.
Oh.
So we started not being able to perform real well, and that's when Brendan and Scott ended up having to take over a little bit for us and try to fight through some of that. And there was a time that we ended up having to go on a what is called a para anchor through that.
What's a para anchor?
It's basically an anchor that you like a parachute that you're able to put in the water, and it will move the boat perpendicular to the waves and keep you in relatively a stationary situation in hard conditions. And Brendan can probably talk a little bit about the situation that we were in that, because he was out rowing, and that was a very critical point in the row, because it was what you said. There were some questions, and like, what's going to happen from here, and do we move forward? And he's got a great story that he and Scott were on deck and having that discussion when Pete and I were off oars and real seasick.
Yeah, so by the third day, there'd been a pretty good storm that had developed to the north of us over Oregon, and it pushed a really healthy swell that Pat was talking about. We had 30, 40 knot winds and about the same size waves. And, it was nothing that we had trained for. And yeah, Pete and Pat had really gotten knocked down by seasickness. I got a little bit seasick, but knew we had to keep moving. And Scott and I had taken over on the oars. And at one point, we had both rowed for, over 11 hours, almost straight, with just a couple of breaks. And we needed a break. We needed to just stop and kind of recalibrate, as it were. So it was about 11:30 at night in really big water, and we made the decision to deploy this para anchor that Pat was talking about. And what it does is it turns the boat into the wind and the waves and just gives you an opportunity to pause. The boat doesn't really move that much. It really does kind of anchor it. You might move backwards at 0.1 knots, so pretty insignificant loss of time, so long as you're not on it for a long period of time. And we're pulling out the para anchor and getting ready to deploy it, and Scott and I kind of looked at each other, and I think we had the same thought at the same time, which is, can we really do this? Are we getting beyond our capabilities? And it was really at that moment that we realized that we were doing this for something that was so much bigger than the four of us. It really finally hit us that, this row was more than just four guys out to prove themselves in an endurance capacity. and more about what we could do for Parkinson's and for the community that was really behind us. You know, to get back to your question about that first day when we left out of Monterey, we had hundreds of people there from the local Parkinson's community all the way up to a national who had come in to see us off. And all I could think about was them when we were doing this, and knew that this was so much more than us. But at the same time, in that very moment, we needed rest. We needed a break. And so we deployed that pair anchor for about 5 hours. It gave Scott and I time to rest and fuel. And then we pulled up that pair anchor the next day, and we didn't stop the rest of the way to Hawaii. You know, there were times where, yeah, we not be rowing and kind of enjoying the current and wind and waves to carry us along, but we were moving. And that was really a significant turning point in just recognizing how powerful what we were doing and how it was so much more than just us on that boat.
Yeah, but so many questions swirling in my head right now, maybe like that storm, but were you scared? Like, what was this like a life and death situation? Was it like a possibility that you guys weren't coming out of that storm? I mean, I'm just picturing like the boat in Gilligan's Island getting like blown all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a unfair visualization to have. I think that's it's pretty reasonable. We were getting knocked around pretty hard. You know, the waves were huge. We're taking rogue waves from the side, just getting absolutely drenched when you're out rowing, to the point where, you know, some of these waves are so forceful, you just get completely knocked out of your row seat and slammed up against the side of the boat. A day later, you know, during when we were rowing, Scott was on the oars. I was right in front of him. A big rogue wave came in and snapped one of our carbon fiber oars in half. So that kind of tells you the force that we were dealing with. But in terms of it being life or death, you know, I think it's all perspective. For me, I didn't really feel like we were fearing for our lives. I just felt that we were definitely in a situation where the best way to control the situation was to just pause, just take time. What we really recognized as the ocean got bigger and conditions got more intense was how incredibly safe I felt on that boat, because she could handle the conditions. And that, you know, unfortunately, as Pat mentioned, you know, we really couldn't train for that. But once we had a couple of days of opportunity to experience it and see how the boat handled in those conditions, you started to feel a lot of confidence in her capacity to go through that. And we started to adapt and learn right in the middle of it how to best row those conditions. And I think that, you know, eased that aspect of the fear component. But, you know, that's my perspective. I mean, keep in mind that I'm coming from a big background of having exposed myself and been right next to death on some of the biggest mountains in the world, where I've had people die in my arms. And, you know, I felt that in those situations, you truly didn't have as much control, where, you know, you've got avalanches and other objective hazards. And in this instance, yeah, the ocean was big, but the boat really instilled a certain amount of confidence that she's going to float. Worst case scenario, we're going to capsize. These boats self-right. And, but we really recognized just how stable the whole thing was taking place, that it was really a matter of just being okay with that, which was not true for all of us, but that was just based on the experience that we each carried into this event, and how we kind of carried through and experienced it.
How were you feeling?
So
I was in seasick.
yeah, seasick. So, um, it was a different perspective for me. You know, I have not went through something that crazy, I would just say. And there were certain times that we questioned, yeah, is this gonna be here tomorrow? You know, and we talked about that as a team a little bit later, and everybody did have a little perspective. It was fleeting, you know, but what I came out of it is, I was with 3 other guys that, when I look back, made all the right decisions at the right time. And it just came together where I was confident in how we were prepared and who I was with. And it ended up turning out all right. You know, after the para anchor, you know, Peter and I were able to get back in, basically start helping out and getting over our seasickness. And Brendan was talking about the boat. We were on, you know, a week later or so, we were in 20-foot waves, and I think Brendan and I were on and said, man, how comfortable we are just rolling through these, just knowing what the boat's how it's gonna handle. And he just sees something coming. It's like, oh,
20-foot wave.
yeah. And it just coming rolling through us in little sets, and you were just, it wouldn't even bother you. We would get hit by rogue waves, and yeah, they were tough, but you were a little bit more ready for them, and you would just kind of look at each other and keep rowing, you know. It's just like on to the next.
So in a way, having that hellish experience in your third day kind of like made everything easier in comparison.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird way to look at it, Brendan. I would say so. You know, it's like, oh, she can make it through this. I'm comfortable. And you were like, okay, next. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So what's it like when you're, because you said 9 other boats or 8 other boats?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you see those other boats out there with you, or are you guys just kind of like spread out so far you can't even see them?
Yeah, we saw each other for the first couple of hours. I mean, everybody was staggered at the start, but after that, we didn't see any other boats until we arrived in Hawaii. And a couple of reasons for that. One is everybody had their own strategy in terms of their departure and angle. Off the California coast, there's a Japanese current that runs north-south. And so you're trying to break through that, which is about 250, 300 miles, and then catch the trade winds that are headed towards Hawaii. So you're headed out at kind of a southwest angle, but you also want to head as far west as you possibly can, as soon as you can. And so all the boats really splintered out in their own trajectory towards Hawaii. We did have one boat that was about 3 to 5 miles behind us for a day or so, and we could see him on the radar. But you know, we're only 3.5 feet above the water.
Right.
And, you know, there was no chance of physically seeing each other while we were doing that. So it definitely, we didn't see anyone. Yeah. We saw a lot of big tanker vessels. We had a naval warship or destroyer come by us one day.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa. Did they like get that close to you that like?
They pulled up about a half mile from us. I tried to raise them on the radio, but they didn't respond. And but Scott took out the binoculars and looked at them, and there was about 60 eyes looking back at him. So they saw us, and but that was pretty cool. And then, you know, a number of fishing trawlers and the likes, especially as we got closer towards Hawaii. But
wow.
Other than that, you know, not many vessels. It was just us.
What's it like just being out on the ocean with no other human life in sight or land?
So that's a really good question, because it's something that is surreal, and every day it almost seemed like a different ocean. You know, there were sections of really waves going in every direction, There were, wind squalls that would come across us, and then there were days of dead ocean where it's as flat and as calm as you could ever believe, like you're in a big pond that you could never get out of.
Wow.
And we had that for 3 or 4 days where there was no wind, no waves, and you wouldn't even know if you were moving. And it was one of the more real days because it just felt like almost a Groundhog Day, where it's just, you didn't know what day it was.
So how do you even know what day it is when you're going 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 41, 43 days? Like, how do you even know what a day is?
You really don't. It just happens. But it's also very simple. There's a very simplicity of it where all you're doing is rowing, eating, sleeping. And there's some real nice calming about it in some aspects of how different it is than the real world that we're living in today of the chaos.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you ever decide to take a swim, like jump off the boat and like take a dip for a little while?
There were 2 times, not for just a swim,
Right.
but we had to clean the bottom of the boat.
Oh. How come?
There's things grow on the bottom of the boat, and basically it'll slow you down.
Uh-huh.
So there were 2 times that we had to clean the boat. Peter had to get out. When was Peter out the first time?
Day 12 or so, he was the first one to jump in the water and clean the barnacle growth and the likes off the bottom. So he jumped in and scrubbed the bottom. And then I jumped in about 10 days later and did the same thing. But that growth on the bottom can have the impact of about 1 knot per hour.
Wow.
Over the continuation of the entire row. So it's pretty significant impact on speed. So it was an important thing to do. Yeah.
But you weren't just like taking a dip to cool off.
No. Yeah, it was definitely a deliberate need of the crossing, and the growth really increased as the water got warmer, as you got closer towards Hawaii. But it wasn't just for fun, as it were. It was definitely with intention. But I can tell you that it felt great because you're effectively off the boat for a brief period. You're moving your legs and your arms in a different motion than you were for the time leading up to that point. And so it did feel refreshing and also pleasant to just be off the boat for a minute.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Did you guys see any wildlife when you're out there? Any sharks, fish, dolphins, whales?
So during the training rows outside of Ventura, we saw a lot of wildlife, dolphins, pods, whales. We even had a great white shark follow us. So we have a video of it.
Is that scary? Like, could a shark do something to the boat?
I don't think so. Yeah, you just stay in the boat and you'll be all right. One of those type things. I think there's a comment. We said, well, what did we do? And Brendan goes, keep rowing. And so while we were videoing it, but on the race itself, we saw some whales and some dolphins outside of Monterey, just starting off. And then once you get out in the big ocean, there's not a lot of feed, so there's not a lot of wildlife. I think we saw some dolphins. Brendan, I think we saw maybe a shark, fish, something just come up one day. Maybe it was getting a fish that was following us or something. But there's not much out there out in the big blue until we got close to Hawaii again. So.
And as you're going, since you are connected by satellite, are you like how frequent is your contact with other people, like the land, or daily?
Yeah. We were between our Garmin InReach, which allowed us to text, and then we had sat phones, so we were in communication with family and friends, and then the safety duty officers for the race every couple of days, along with our weather router, who was texting us kind of the forecast for the next 4 days, and our bearing. So, our course over ground to go towards Hawaii. So it was daily communications. And then, as Pat mentioned, every few days we'd upload, videos and, kind of updates for social media. So it was pretty steady communication with the outside world. Yeah.
That's interesting. Were you hearing back from the social media and the following and the movement that was going around this?
So, yeah, actually there was a pretty profound period where we were about halfway, and our social media manager had reached out to the community because we were, in that point of really starting to dig into the grit and, the resilience that was going to be needed for this crossing. And he said, hey, the boys really need your support right now. Sorry, this still gets me. But so he reached out, and then we received this text message from him with about, I don't know, over 100 comments of support. And we just passed that around the boat and read these messages of support. And I'll tell you that it lightened our load. It made the boat a little lighter. It made our strength come back, and it was incredible to have that outpouring of support from the community right when we needed it. Every time, like, you couldn't make it up. It just would come in and it just was incredible. Because, we had the four of us, and we would talk every morning. We'd meet on deck and check in with each other. But when you start to feel that profound support that you're effectively unaware of, because even though you're in touch, you're out of touch. And it just made it so much easier to accomplish what we'd set out to do.
Yeah, that time was special. We had just found out we've been fighting kind of an abnormal weather pattern for this time of year, and we didn't really catch any of the trade winds that are common to help push us that way. And we just had found out that we were going to be almost 3 to 5 days longer on the ocean than we expected. And at that time, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You're out there 20 days and you're thinking we're going to be there in 35, and now it's 40. And it's, okay, do you have another week in you?
Right.
And when we were able to get those comments back from everybody, and you said 100. I don't know. There were where you just kept reading, and it just finally is like, okay, just gave us that extra little push that, okay, we got this. We just keep doing what we're doing, and we'll get there. It was one of the great moments of the journey, for sure.
And what was it like when you finally did land in Hawaii?
Oh, man.
Could you see, like, when you first saw Hawaii, when you first saw the land, what was that like?
It was, we talk about the best moments of the row, for sure. That was, besides landing, it was one of the highlights of the journey, because you're just so ready, and now you're going to make it, and that your family is there, and you're going towards them instead of away from them. There was a long time where you're just continuing to move farther away from your family, and now they're on the other side and you're real close, and that felt good. And it was just a great point in the race. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, with that perspective, it really brought it home in terms of the fact that we were rowing towards everyone and not away. And, it was pretty unique because we saw a wahoo first off the side of the boat. So that was our first glimpse of land. And then, as we just progressively got closer to Kauai, it just brought a little extra pep in our step to finish it out. But yeah, it was incredible to finally see it, and then something that people may not realize, but that last morning, as the sun had come up and Scott and I were rowing, these guys were asleep, and we were close enough to shore, maybe a few miles off as we were heading in. An offshore breeze kicked in, and we smelled earth for the first time in 40 days.
Wow.
And it was the most intoxicating and enriching smell that I can't really put into words, but it just filled you up, and it made you appreciate, how profound, having that ground so close and being able to smell the richness of the earth. And of course, I mean, landing on the Garden Island doesn't hurt, but that was so incredible. And it just, is an enriching experience to have. So as we were coming in, and then rounding the corner into the bay, and, we were probably a mile out, and you could hear people cheering and, whooping and hollering and everything. And boats were coming out to meet us as we were coming in, and local paddlers and everything in their canoes and kayaks. And it was just incredible. Yeah.
I've just seen the video of you guys coming in, and it chokes you up, and I can't even imagine what it must have been like for real. So we're now kind of back to where we started. We're gonna do a little Team Fox walk. Got a good group here that came out in the weather, which is really nice. But just to wrap it up, what's next for Human Powered Potential?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out. We really want to continue the brand and the movement and the awareness. One of the biggest things that came across this last row for me is we were able to reach 26,000 different donors.
Yeah.
And that's something that awareness and that broadness that was able to reach is important to us to continue. We are putting together something right now. Everybody's going to have to keep tuned.
Okay.
But it is in the works, and hopefully we'll be able to announce it soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What's the boating version of a cliffhanger?
A boating version of a cliff. I don't know what that's a good question. But yeah, we really recognized, the profound impact that just doing this longer duration event has for the community and raising that awareness. And so we're really hoping to continue to support people living with Parkinson's to complete audacious adventures. And so we're starting to map that out, and we have some pretty exciting events that'll be coming forward. But folks can stay tuned and stay in touch with us, and they'll.
Where can people do that?
Best way is through social media on Instagram or Human Powered Potential, and on Facebook, Human Powered Potential. Then our website is humanpoweredpotential.org. So yeah, that's probably the best way to stay in touch.
All right. Great. Thank you guys both so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to walk with me before the Team Fox walk. And everyone else out there, I hope that you are as inspired as I am. Every mile matters.